last pep talk, I was telling you about how the highlight of my Rosh Hashanah was attending my favorite shul in the whole world, which is also the largest shul in the whole world. It's the Belz shul in Kiryat Belz, Jerusalem. And so after I came back on Rosh Hashanah from davening, I was telling my husband about how amazing it had been, how it was so incredible. So I finally convinced my husband that he really had to go, that he really had to go and check it out for himself. So the Friday night after Rosh Hashanah, my husband walked over, and when he came home, he had also been amazed by the experience. But what did he talk about? He said, the Rebbe this, and the Rebbe that, and the Rebbe did this, and the Rebbe did that, and it was so amazing. And I realized that, I've gone quite a few times to the Belz shul, and I've never actually seen the Rebbe. I've never actually seen the Belz Rebbe. So I was thinking, how incredible it would be. The next time that I went, I would go to actually, to the windows of the women's section. I would actually, make sure that I actually got a sighting of the Rebbe to actually see the Belz Rebbe. So this past Simchat Torah, I found a way from I made an arrangement that my young kids were being watched, and I went with my 3-month-old baby, Sophia, and we went walking to Kiryat Belz, and we went to the Belz shul. And we got there at 9:30 in the morning, and when we got there, so they were having in the area of the Tish, not exactly in the shul, but in the Tish area, and I looked through, there were like a few windows in the women's section, and I looked through the window, and there were already, thousands and thousands of chassidim there, and you could just see everyone was just standing, silent, and just waiting, very quietly davening, and waiting, and in tremendous anticipation for the moment when the hakafot would start, when they would start dancing. And a woman next to me, and the woman right next to me, looking in the women's section, she explained to me that in Belz the chassidim don't dance. All the chassidim were standing around like this sort of empty area, and she explained to me that in Belz only the Rebbe dances. Only the Rebbe dances, and everybody watches him dance. So I had this amazing place. There were very few women in the women's section, so I had this perfect spot. I was right up against the window, and I left Sophia a little bit behind me, so I could still see her, but she was out of the way. And I was just waiting, so I was standing and waiting with everybody there, waiting, in silence, just waiting and waiting for the hakafot to start, waiting for the moment when the Rebbe would start dancing. And it was just incredible, the air was thick with anticipation. So after maybe a few minutes, I turned around and I saw, just to check on Sophia, and I saw that she had woken up. Her eyes were open and she was moving her leg, but she was smiling, she was okay. So I kept on waiting, and then the big moment arrived. You hear everyone start singing, and I knew all the women started gathering around and started crying. And by that time, a lot of women had come. Women were sort of stacked over me and stacked beside me at all sides, and sort of trying to elbow in to get a sight, to get a view of so that they'd be able to see the Rebbe dancing. And I had the best spot. I could see a corner of the dance floor, so I'd be able to see the Rebbe for the first time and see him at maybe the highest one of the highest moments of the year, and see him dancing on Simchat Torah morning. And at that moment, I hear a baby crying. So I turn around. Sorry for the unexpected guest cameo appearance by a crying baby. That was perfect timing. So I gave her a pacifier. I hope that she'll let me finish the pep talk. But I heard a baby crying. And I turned around, and it was Sophia. Sophia was crying. So I went out, and the moment I left, 10 women had taken my spot to see the Rebbe dancing. There's no way I was ever going to get back in there to see the Rebbe. And I, went out, and I took Sophia, I unbuckled her, and I picked her up. And as we were walking out, tears were falling down my face. But it's not what you think. You think, probably, that I was crying out of frustration, out of disappointment. And I was very frustrated, and I was very disappointed. But the real reason I was crying is because it was such a tremendous moment of clarity. Such a tremendous moment of clarity for me. Because I knew that at that moment, I heard the chassidim singing, na 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 na. I knew the Rebbe was dancing. I saw the women, everyone getting so excited for such a high moment. And I knew at that moment that the way that the Rebbe was serving Hashem was by dancing with the Torah. I knew all the people there, like all the Hasidim and all the women who were watching, the way that they were serving Hashem was by watching that and watching the Rebbe. And the way that I was serving Hashem was by taking care of my baby. That was the way that I was serving Hashem. The way that I serve Hashem in that moment and always is by taking care of my baby, taking care of my children, and raising them to be good Jews who love the Torah and love Hashem. So on the way home that morning, I was thinking about how I'd seen all those thousands of Hasidim there. Thousands and thousands of Hasidim. And I remembered that I'd once heard from an elderly rabbi that we're close to, that right after World War II, the Belz Hasidim, they had been so almost completely decimated, destroyed by the Nazis, that the Belz Hasidim didn't even have a minyan in Jerusalem. There weren't even 10 Belzer men in Jerusalem. And now, throughout the world, there's tens and tens of thousands of Belzer Hasidim. And I know, I just had a baby. And thank God 3 months ago, Sophia. And I remember very, very clearly how difficult it is to be pregnant. And I remember very, very clearly how much more difficult it was to give birth. And how difficult it is to be taking care of a young baby. And I know, and I just remembered, that every single one of those Hasidim, this Tchiyat Mitim of the Belzer community, like this resurrection of the dead, of the Chasidut Belz, is in the merit of the women who went through pregnancies, probably for many of them very, very difficult, and births, which are always difficult, almost always, and births and taking care of children, which also has its own difficulties. Child after child after child after child. And end up resurrecting this community, of creating a community of tens of thousands of Hasidim. And I understood that this community exists because of women, because of the self-sacrifice and even suffering of women, who understood, the way that they understood the way the Rebbe serves Hashem is his way, and the way their husbands serve Hashem is their way, and the way that a mother serves Hashem is by having children, giving birth to Jewish children, and raising them to be good Jews who love the Torah and love Hashem. I want to bless all of you with an amazing week and an amazing new year.